Assalamu alaikum viewers, from wherever you are connected. I would like to welcome you to the third day of Valor of Bangladesh Strategy Summit 2021 in pursuit of a better tomorrow. The summit is sponsored by Mutual Trust Bank, powered by IPDC, supported by Ispahani and in association with Zahedee Foundation. We had a wonderful discussion rounds over the past 2 days, and today we arrive on the third day. I hope you will remain with us for the whole day. We have another round of 4 panel, and we would like to end our day with a finale, which will be preceded by a very important discussion called SDG, the Sustainable Development Goal.
Welcome once again, viewers, on the day 3 of Strategy Summit 2021, presented by Mutual Trust Bank, powered by IPDC Finance, supported by Ispahani, and in association with Zahedee Foundation. Moving on to our first panel of day 3, which is education, which is our bloodline of the economy of any nation. Because an equitable quality education plays a key role to sustainable development of a country in transformative landscape. And this very important panel's proud sponsor is My Classroom Online.
Hello, welcome to the session on education, which is part of the summit organized by Valor of Bangladesh. My name is Imran Rahman. I am the Dean of the School of Business and a special advisor to the board at the University of Liberal Arts, Bangladesh. And I'm here to act as the moderator. So we have a very distinguished set of panelists. We have with us Dr. Camille Rutherford, who is the Vice Provost of Strategic Planning and International at Brock University, Canada. Dr. Rutherford will start our session with a very, very interesting presentation about e-learning and learning management systems. We have with us Ms. Sabrina Shaheed, the Principal of Sir John Wilson School, Dhaka. We have Professor Omar Rahman, who's the Dean of Research and Director of the Center for Health, Population and Development at the University of Liberal Arts, Bangladesh. And finally, we have Professor Mohammad Momen, who is a Professor of Accounting and Finance at the Institute of Business Administration, University of Dhaka. So we are looking forward to talking to these esteemed panelists. Thank you. You know, we have an exciting lineup for you. We're going to basically try and cover 3 topics. One is the adoption of technology and the challenges we're facing and how it's going to look in future in terms of rolling out education given the pandemic and the new normal. So that's going to be the starting topic. We'll all discuss from our own points of view. We are then going to touch upon something that is very important in Bangladesh, is the challenges we face in getting the quality of our education up to an international level. So we're going to talk about the challenges of improving education quality. And finally, if there's time permitting, we will also talk about sustainable development and the challenges about incorporating sustainability into the school and college and university curriculum. So we have quite a packed session, and I hope all the viewers are going to enjoy listening to the esteemed panelists. So let me now start with a presentation by Dr. Camille Rutherford. And the presentation is relating to the digitalization of education with emphasis on learning management systems and the potential of that in future. So can I request the organizer to start the video presentation? Thank you.
Thanks. I'm Dr. Camille Rutherford from Brock University in St. Catharines, Canada. Brock University has decades of experience of exemplary teacher training. We were one of the first teacher education programs in Canada to require all of our students to complete a Computers in the Classroom course. We have built on our years of experience and research to support 21st century teaching and learning across the globe, including projects in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean. These projects have built on Canada's global reputation, as evidenced by our outstanding PISA scores, to support educational capacity building in the developing world and help these countries in their attempts to replicate Canada's educational success. My personal research includes working closely with multinational technology companies such as Microsoft and IBM, as well as innovative ed tech startups. Before I begin our examination of how Bangladesh can transform and digitize their education system through the use of an LMS, and how this LMS can jumpstart educational advancement, it's important that we review the current context and challenges in Bangladesh. I am privileged to have a talented research associate from Bangladesh whose work compares and contrasts education in Canada and Bangladesh. She will begin by providing an overview of the current context in Bangladesh, as well as the educational challenges.
Hello everyone, my name is Rakha Zabin. I am an international student from Bangladesh, currently pursuing my PhD in Educational Studies at Brock University, Canada. I have studied all my life in Bangladesh and came to Canada in 2018. I would say I am a privileged student to experience the tech-enabled educational setting in Canada. Drawing on my current positive experiences, I would share my insights reflecting on the contextual and educational challenges of Bangladesh that I have experienced earlier. Although significant enhancement to education has resulted in nearly universal access to primary education, an estimated illiteracy rate of over 78% of the young adult population, and the rising issues of gender inequality in the primary and secondary education sector of Bangladesh that has taken place within the last decade clearly indicates that a substantial proportion of the population still remains outside the orbit of education, which poses a significant challenge to achieving the Digital Bangladesh Vision 2021. Thus, there is a strong need to transform the population into a productive workforce through the improvement of education and work skill. Technology-mediated education can substantially contribute to efficiently educating the large population and upskilling the existing workforce to overcome these significant educational challenges. Bangladesh confronts many challenges that emerge from a high illiteracy rate, low secondary and higher education enrollment ratios, and a high poverty level. Other challenges include weak sector planning and monitoring capacity and inadequate funding level and mechanisms. Thus, to remain on its desired growth trajectory, Bangladesh needs the adoption of an appropriate policy framework and proper regulatory reforms to address the emerging challenges in the education sector. In terms of educational quality and resources, the academic curriculum of Bangladesh is textbook-based, which raises a lack of synergy between the student need and the real-world need. There is a significant deficit of digital educational content and resources starting from K-12 up to tertiary education, along with the limited provision of teacher training and teaching aids. This leads to low-quality education at the secondary and tertiary levels, which demands innovative strategies to improve quality education. Moreover, the ICT infrastructure of Bangladesh is also inadequate, with limited access to technological devices and connectivity, especially in semi-urban and rural areas. Finally, in terms of technological adoption, there has been significant reluctance to adopt e-learning platform or learning management systems critical for holistic learners management. Now, Dr. Rutherford will identify how technologically enabled educational platforms can lead to the solution to these challenges.
Thank you, Raka. Overcoming the challenges that Raka has noted will require a concerted effort by all stakeholders: educational ministries, technologists, technology institute, infrastructure providers, content developers, as well as LMS partners. But before that can happen, it's important that we examine the building blocks that need to be in place to make this change happen. Starting from the bottom and working our way up, we see that awareness is the key thing that we must begin with. It's important to increase the awareness of the benefits and long-term effects of an e-learning strategy and advocating for the need for a mindset shift amongst all stakeholder groups. Next, it'll be important to have a solid policy framework, a policy that formulates a national e-learning strategy and is a key initiative of the Ministry of Education, and that its focus is to help develop an ICT strategy to integrate with educational institutes. Will be imperative that the infrastructure is in place to make this a reality. This will require countrywide access to high-speed internet, connections at low cost, ensuring that there are low-cost devices available via local production and available to our stakeholders. Next, we need to consider the development of digital content. It will be key to have a skill force of trained content developers that can digitize curriculum at all levels, as well as you are developing these new curriculums to introduce STEM-based content that develops 21st century skills at the same time. This plan cannot be successful without training. It will be key to ensure your teaching population can develop the skills for facilitating and conducting e-learning programs, and that there is a nationwide training program for learners of how to use ICT for learning. Lastly, to make this plan work, you need a learning management system. Learning management systems are key to embedding these teaching strategies and connect them to the technology affordances. And then most importantly, an LMS platform will facilitate e-learning and flexible learning across the country. So step 1, task force formation. Step 2, piloting some of these models. And step 3, leading to a mass rollout of these new innovative and world-leading instructional practices. The adoption of a learning management system has key benefits for both students and their parents. For students, it will serve to improve the quality of education. They will have the opportunity to access interactive, digitized curriculums. This also enables diverse assessment options and creates a curriculum opportunity that can be better served to support the needs of students, especially students with special needs. An LMS can also serve to create flexible learning arrangements. This can facilitate self-paced learning, 24/7 access to learning materials, and remote learning when needed to support continuity in the classroom and outside. It will also serve to develop ICT knowledge. In addition to increasing students' awareness of safe internet use, an LMS adoption will greatly enhance students' adoption, knowledge, and understanding of ICT. This will greatly enhance their engagement when they're at school, but most importantly, enhance their future career opportunities and their opportunities to support the advancement of Bangladesh as a country. It's important that we don't forget that an LMS can also help to serve parent engagement by making it easier for parents to track learner progress and performance through use of e-portfolios and greatly improve school to parent communication. Everyone will be on the same page and understand where their child is and what is needed to support their educational success. In addition to the benefits for students and parents that I just discussed, there can be great benefits for LMS investments and a significant return on that investment for educational systems and authorities. Firstly, the use of an LMS can enhance administrative oversight and efficacy through the automation of administrative functionality. Now, attendance, curriculum review, even academic achievement can be reviewed in a cloud-based LMS system. Administrative and logistical costs can also be reduced through the reduction of use of hard copies of textbooks, stationery, utility costs, and even some labor costs can be reduced as well. More importantly, the adoption of LMS can increase literacy rates by greatly increasing access and capacity. Larger proportions of your young population can now participate in virtual classroom learning environments where they may not have been able to access that before without an LMS. An LMS can also create flexibility in arranging classes and create multiple shifts. This can be an area of significant capacity advancement. A blended or flipped learning approach can facilitate learning outside the classroom. In a flipped learning approach, students complete some of their work online before class and then go into the classroom to engage with their teacher with the activities that are best suited to in-person interactions. This can significantly free up learning space, and I think that this can be a significant benefit at your secondary and tertiary education levels. E-learning books and contexts can greatly reduce material costs and distribution. Because with an LMS, students can access this dynamic, engaging learning materials more efficiently. More importantly, when we look at the centralized development of these interactive e-learning resources, this can greatly reduce curriculum design, effort, and cost. In the state of California, when they made a commitment to creating e-learning resources, they saw that the use of these e-textbooks significantly increased educational costs at the school level and at the system level. Here in Ontario, our provincial government has been aggressively funding the use of open educational resources. They are paying for universities like Brock to develop exemplary learning resources and textbooks so that they can be shared freely across the province. This has significantly reduced the individual costs for textbooks for students and school systems. More importantly, the centralized development of e-learning resources and exemplary e-learning resources enables teachers to focus more on delivering dynamic, interactive, and engaging learning experiences and less time on developing the curriculum. I'm a former classroom teacher. Not all teachers are as skilled at developing curriculum resources. Now they can draw on the expertise of the skilled curriculum developers and focus on what they know best, and that's their students and supporting their students in the classroom. An opportunity to totally leapfrog advancements in education is through the use of learning analytics so that you can shift the education paradigm in Bangladesh to the next level. An LMS will unlock much deeper insights into learner behavior and analytics, provide them with personalized content, and make education more engaging and meaningful for them. And once again, support further student success. In conclusion, I hope my presentation has helped you to understand that an LMS will enable Bangladesh to leapfrog educational advancement, greatly reduce the technology skills gap, foster a highly educated workforce, and support individual and societal economic advancements. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rutherford, for that wonderful presentation. It's kind of it's a very, very educative primer, all about LMS and also using technology in rolling out learning and teaching services out there. So it sets us up very nicely for me to kind of now ask my esteemed panelists one by one about, the pandemic has thrust upon each one of us this challenge of how to continue with our teaching and learning. And we, of course, as a country, don't enjoy the all the facilities that are available in an advanced country like Canada. But nonetheless, I think the various schools, colleges, and universities have been quite innovative and creative in mustering up whatever resources they have to actually roll out online learning in some instance. There have been huge problems with it as well, particularly with the public schools and colleges and universities, where a significant part of the students are either come from a poorer economic background, or they have moved out to their villages and small towns where internet facilities are very sketchy and also expensive. So this is something that the government is dealing with, and hopefully our guest of honor, the Deputy Minister for Education, will touch upon that. But for now, let me start with Sabrina Shaheed, who is the principal of one of the top actually private schools which roll out English medium education and also follow an international curriculum. And basically ask you to just share with us how you adapted to the challenge of moving online, and also about, give an idea about the LMS systems that you put in place, what challenges you face there, and also going forward, once the pandemic is over, which I hope is not too far away, how do you see in your school the role of, LMS going forward? Are you going to keep that on in some, are you going to invest more in it, etc.? So over to you, Sabrina.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me here. Valor of Bangladesh has created this opportunity for us to talk about this topic, and I think it's extremely important for all of us to understand what is happening in the education sector right now. Some city-based schools and universities have been able to hold online classes, whereas classes and assessment, while others, most of the schools in Bangladesh could not afford to have online classes the way an English medium or a privileged school has been able to. The concerns are the availability and the affordability of technology to conduct classes online. But definitely, we have been fortunate that yes, in my school especially, and school like ours, Dhaka-based school, and some schools in the big cities, they have been able to conduct classes for the children. Yes, initially it was a lot of adjustment, especially because the teachers were totally unaware. Most of the teachers were totally unaware of how to use online classes, how to conduct the online classes. So in the initial stage, I would say that we have seen a lot of difficulties, but now I think teachers have become adaptive to the system, and they're coming up with a lot of new ideas, which is the best thing I would say about this pandemic, that teachers have relearned a lot of new techniques, a lot of starting from technology to teaching strategies, classroom control, everything that they have to relearn and adapt to the new situation. So that has been going great, I would say. But that's not the picture of the whole country. As Imran Bhai, you have pointed out that most of the universities and colleges, or the schools, specifically primary schools and secondary schools outside of Dhaka, even in Dhaka, have not been able to take classes in that manner on a regular basis. So that's definitely is a struggle that we are going to be facing in the near future as well. Because suddenly it's not going to change. The infrastructure, the affordability of the parents are not going to change right away. So it's going to take some time. But the teachers' training is one point that I would like to point out over here for us to go forward, to move forward. Teachers need that training to feel comfortable, to feel confident, to take this forward, to take this new way of teaching to a better platform. Talking about LMS, what we're doing right now is we are combining Zoom or Google Meet or Google Classroom right now. We are not using a dedicated LMS system at this moment, but definitely there is a chance of using it, and we have been shown a lot of different kind of LMS system, so which we are going to take note of. But there's one little problem over here, that is the affordability of the LMS system, because it's going to cost. And obviously, right at this pandemic time where schools are actually struggling to get the tuition fees, which are regular tuition fees, I don't think putting another system in place is going to be very helpful or inviting for the parents. So we'll have to think about that in that term as well. So either school will have to step up and have a provision for putting a system like that, which will cost money. So there's a lot of financial things that we need to think about as well.
Great, thank you, Sabrina. Now, can I bring in Professor Momen, who represents the public universities? He's with the Institute of Business Administration, which is part of the University of Dhaka, our largest public university. So, same topic in a sense that speaking from your experience at IB and within Dhaka University, how successful has it been for IBA and the Dhaka University to move online? And what do you see are the challenges to be tackled if we are able to reach, the picture that was shown by Dr. Rutherford in her presentation? Over to you, Momen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Professor Imran Rahman. for giving me this opportunity to speak in this August gathering. The question that you have asked, yes, it was initially when we were confronted with the situation that because of the pandemic and classes and all, everything was suspended. I think IBA was one of the very first institution within the private university, public universities, to start off. We didn't wait. I think we were in the middle of a partial semester that was done physically, and then we continued from there on with online classes. There wasn't much of a challenge. One or two online seminar was conducted to train the users, both in the students and the faculties of the facility that we were using, the tools that we were using. At that time, a third party was engaged, and although that the third party was using a platform called Shudokko, which was using Zoom, so that was initially taken to have the control aspect, like classes are taken in time, and regular attendance are there, etc., etc. The part of the LMS that has been talked about here. So within a very short time, students and teachers, they got used to it. I recall a student who was my class representative. This entire time she was in Pabna, which is a far away township from Dhaka, and she was mostly on either 3G or 4G, I never realized that she was conducting the role of a class representative sitting in Pabna. So those wasn't that much of a problem for IBA, mostly because we probably don't have, the students are already having laptops and they were equipped with the technology, they were already using it. Teachers were also very much involved with using technology from before. The challenges probably, which is still there, is for evaluation. We have continuous assessment. So it is easier to take, we always take quizzes, assignments, class, etc. But we do also have exams and script checking and all of those things. So that's still a challenge, that has not been entirely resolved. Regarding IBA, there's an advantage that we run through our own statute, but Dhaka University has got their own, legal system, and as a result, their examination and everything has got some more, I think, attuned towards a physical exam, because there's a second examiner, a third examiner. These kind of things are already there, which is not the case in IBA. So we didn't face much of a trouble doing that. So for us, we finished that semester in the first when the pandemic started, and then we continued with the next semester. Now we're in the third semester in a row all online. So we didn't have much problem adapting to it at IBA. And our intake has been affected. We haven't had the new recruitments for the next batches, which was actually planned in right after the Eid festivities. But I'm not sure with the second wave coming in, what will be the situation there. So that will be a physical exam that has to be conducted. Regarding the presentation which I just saw, I do not disagree with any of the recommendations and the benefits of the system. But I think, I don't know when the researcher from Bangladesh, how long ago she went, or how long ago this was done. I think this could be the scenario of pre-pandemic, but pandemic has actually given a lot of impetus to the whole thing, and the acceptance of technology, and also people got more adapted to it. And as Sabrina was suggesting, there were a lot of new suggestions that came in. People became very would say innovative in coming up with solutions. So I think now the situation is slightly different from what the preconditions were, as from the presentation what I could hear. And also on the technological front and the government support and IT and all over this, I think the capabilities and the robustness of the system has been better than what it was before. So, and I do not disagree that there has to be a learning management system that has to be in place. And with or without pandemic, I think we should be going ahead with online classes and all. And what was also interesting, since at IBA we do have professionals training, and people come back for their education while they're already established in their career. So for those people also, it is better to have a partially online, offline kind of an environment, because that way the kind of busy traffic that we have in Dhaka, we can beat that, and we can still have. So I think, going forward, we will have to continue to do this. And I mean, we have to also improve upon using technology and more. The challenges are still, I think, is to develop the content. And it also opened up, because the whole world, whatever is open source content we can have, we have already signed up with few e-libraries, and we are having all the e-resources. I think 2 or 3 big publishing houses we have already signed up with, and our students are already having e-books available from them and with them. So that's I think an advantage of the system that we are already having. Prior to that, people were photocopying things and etc. Now they're already having an e-book available with them. So we have subscribed to those things at IBA. And going forward, I think we have developed some local contents, and based on our local cases, that would probably be helpful. And I'm still not sure how the assessment has to go on an e-system. So over to you, Imran.
Thank you, Momen, for those valuable comments. So now let's move to the private universities. For the sake of Dr. Rutherford, in Bangladesh, we've traditionally had only state-owned universities, which we call the public universities. But since early 1991, we've also had non-government, non-profit or not-for-profit private universities set up by private initiatives. The difference is that the government universities or the public universities receive government funding, and the fee element, student fee element, is very, very tiny. The monthly fee for a student is probably around $1, so it's that small. Whereas the private universities have to depend on student fees for their operation. They get no financial support of any kind, either to the university, or neither do the students get any public scholarships here. So it's a different thing. So if I can bring in Professor Omar Rahman, who has been a vice chancellor of one of the largest private universities for 10 years or more, and now he's still continuing with the private university. So he has a whole breadth of knowledge, and before that he was a faculty in Harvard School of Public Health. So Omar, what is your take for the challenges of, we've overcome the initial shock. I think the faculty, the teachers have done admirably by adapting and learning, but it's still an ad hoc system. So how do you see, say, over the next 2-3 years, universities, particularly for private universities, coping with moving to a system where there will be blended or hybrid learning? If you could share your thoughts on the challenges over the next 2-3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Imran, for giving me the floor. It's really wonderful to be part of this panel, and it's a really germane discussion. And I think we are at a point of transition. As you said, we are there's light at the end of the tunnel. The COVID pandemic, I hopefully will end fairly soon. And then we are going to be faced with this issue about what do we do. As you've pointed out, in this 1 year, there has been phenomenal movement. And I think all over the world, including Bangladesh, and particularly in a relatively poor country like Bangladesh, the adoption of e-learning has been absolutely, I think, just unbelievable. So first and foremost, I'm going to say that, e-learning is here to stay. We've learned a lot both the teachers and the students have adapted. I wouldn't say seamlessly, but I think very, very quickly. So let me just start off sort of from the back end and say, where are we going? I see us going back to the conventional system once the pandemic is more or less sorted out by the end of the year. But I think what will happen is there will be a huge demand for increased access to education, which I think will be very well served by e-learning. So I think, for example, let me give you a specific example of where I see e-learning being very important. For a long time, as you pointed out, at Independent University, I was both the Vice Chancellor and the Dean of the School of Public Health, and we were running a very well-regarded MPH program, which unfortunately was only limited to professionals who were living in Dhaka. And initially, we did it in the evening, and it was a professional-based program, and people after work would come, and we were able to accommodate maybe 50 students a semester. Then there was a lot of demand from people outside the capital, and in response to this demand, not only our university, but our peer universities like North South and BRAC and so on started a weekend program to accommodate people who would come from outside of Dhaka. I was very skeptical of it. I did not think that this was going to work, but there was so much interest, and these were people who were coming in after a 5-day work week. They would, basically come into the city, stay for Friday and half of Saturday, and we covered the whole program in a very intensive day and a half. And it struck me that, my God, these people, first of all, there's so much interest in doing this. And secondly, that, this is a very tough thing for them to do. They're having to come here, stay with relatives, or stay in a hotel and attend the classes. And it would be wonderful if we would have some sort of platform where we could provide this education without them having to come. So using that experience, I'll tell you honestly, I think there is a great untapped demand for education, and because there are relatively few high quality educational institutions, and this, by the way, is not only true for Bangladesh, everywhere in the world, there's a hierarchy in terms of quality, and people want to get access to quality education. And because of geographical issues, they live in Kumilla or they live in Pabna, how are they ever going to be able to get access to a high quality educational program? And now we have the means to deliver it. So that's the first thing. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful transition. And now there is acceptability of the platform and the technology, and we are going to open up access which was hitherto unavailable. So I think that's a plus, any way you look at it. Now, with regard to the challenges, I'm much more optimistic. I think a formal LMS system would be great, but I think that currently the kind of system that we have now, which uses a blend of Google Classroom, which, by the way, I think is a fantastic platform, and a mixture of Zoom and Google Meet, is more than adequate to deliver the kind of material, kind of instruction, even at the master's level. I mean, certainly at the undergraduate level, but also at the master's level. In fact, I would venture, and a student of mine said that e-learning works best for highly motivated students. All right, so let's start off, because there's this whole problem about students, and we've all dealt with that. I'm teaching an undergraduate class. I would say at least half the class turns their microphone off, their video off, and they're there because they have to be in class and they give their attendance. But at the master's level, you usually have students who really want to learn because it's a credential that's important to them, and they want. So there, I think e-learning has its greatest potential. There's a great demand for master's level and postgraduate level education, and that I think will be very well served by e-learning. I think the current platforms that we have, Google Classroom, Google Meet, Zoom, is more than adequate to do. Now, I just want to point out there are certain major advantages that have come from this e-learning adoption. I think charitably, prior to e-learning, there was great independence. So teachers did whatever they wanted, however they wanted, and total freedom was given to the teachers to construct uh, their teaching. And there was no way to monitor it. There was no way, people would come into class. I mean, and the majority of them were very, very conscientious. But, there were obviously, as a vice chancellor, I remember hearing stories about, various teachers would come in and decide to teach whatever they wanted. At least with e-learning, we have a certain amount of standardization and documentation. Students are able to have a documentary record of what is being taught. And if the session is recorded, which I strongly recommend and have supported, they can go back to it, they can learn at their own pace. There is relatively little scope for teachers to deviate too much from, some sort of a guideline. And I think that's all for the good. All right. So there's a certain amount of standardization that is possible because of e-monitoring, and I think that is helpful. And I think there are other advantages. You can, as was pointed out in the presentation that was first given, that you have so many more. You have access to so many more resources, web-based resources, video resources, and all of that is now available. By just clicking on a link, and that was not possible in the pre-e-learning era. So to summarize, I think e-learning has changed the world, and in a very, very positive way. I think it has special relevance for professional education. I totally agree with my good friend, Professor Momen, that assessment remains an issue but I think it can be addressed. And I think what it involves is coming up with creative ways of trying to assess people where you don't have the luxury of monitoring them right in front of you. And anyway, I'll tell you, as an educator, I think too much emphasis is placed on this notion of cheating. How many people are cheating. We have to make sure that people are not getting credit for what they don't deserve. As an educator, I think that it's a misplaced focus. We want students to learn. Yes, we want it to be mostly their own work, but come on, when we give someone to write a paper or a project, we have no way of knowing what exactly they're doing. Yes, we can check for plagiarism and all that, and all of that is possible through the e-learning platform. But this notion of how do I know that the person answering the exam has actually done it on their own, or has not looked up something in Google, or has called their friend, set a better exam, set an exam where that is less amenable to that kind of copying. So I think the assessment remains an issue, particularly in the hidebound systems that public universities and public schools are sort of caught up in. And I think this is an opportunity for us to move to more innovative assessment systems which don't depend on. And one of the big things is, of course, oral presentations. If you can do more of that, and if you can do more where you can actually assess people's creativity, you're not so worried about whether they remember some fact or not, and whether they've done it on their own. So in summary, I think e-learning has changed the world. It is going to have special relevance for professional education as a particular group which is now denied access. And I think assessments we will come up with better ways of assessing people, which will help both in the non-e-learning sphere and in the e-learning sphere. Thank you again.
Thank you, Omar. Your kind of what you said just kind of reminded us that that maybe we need to seriously rethink about how we assess students. I think the assessment is still very old school, and we need to learn. Internationally, the assessment system has moved to a different level, and active learning and having less dependency on these kind of exams, these midterms and these final exams. I think so it's forcing us to for us to rethink about what assessment is all about, whether we should assess a student just on the basis of a performance on a 1.5 hour, 2 hour exam. It's inadequate. And I'm glad that the move to e-learning is forcing us to change. But let's see. While we are in a better position, I mean the universities, the schools and colleges out of Dhaka, they have a challenge on their hands. particularly because of the need for training and retraining of university school administrators and teachers. But thank you. Can I now come back to actually Dr. Rutherford, Camille, if I may call you? I mean, you've heard some of the feedback from three, distinguished and very influential academicians. So, would you add your own thoughts in the light of the presentation and what you've just heard? Thank you.
So first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity to be a part of this distinguished panel. And it's always so exciting for me to be amongst people that are excited about education, excited about education innovation, and how they can use that to advance an entire society or community. I'm not just looking for, I want my students to be the best students. Let's all students to be successful. But I think one of the things that's really important, I think, that I see as my role in participating is being able to compare and contrast what is happening in other parts of the world, what's happening in Canada, to give some insight to what is possible in Bangladesh. Obviously, being cognizant of the significant differences in funding and infrastructure that's available. But I think it is important to learn from what we have done in Canada, to look for ways to be able to replicate that. And one of the key things that I will mention is when we talk about an LMS, for us here in Ontario, Canada's largest, most populated province, when we talk about an LMS and individual schools having to pay for the cost of acquiring that, we are lucky in that the government licensed an LMS for the entire province. So all K-12 schools would use the same LMS. That supported training, infrastructure, and curriculum development. Here's the key thing. The LMS that was developed here in Ontario. And I think the same thing can happen in Bangladesh, that you learn from what is happening across the world and develop an innovative solution that is homegrown for you as well. So that you take the best of what you are seeing from your Moodle, from your Google Classroom, from Zoom, and integrating all of that. And I think then in developing that solution, it is having those elements that have the engagement for between teachers and students and each other, and teachers and parents as well, but also include some of that dynamic and innovative assessment strategies that we've been talking about here that will help to mitigate any worries about cheating and academic dishonesty. So I think it is important to look for local solutions. I think it's also really important that we look at what the full continuum of e-learning is like. What happened because of the lockdowns, because of the pandemic, that's not true e-learning. That was emergency remote teaching. So we need to look at the full spectrum of that. I think that what Omar was talking about in students in the public health program that were coming in the weekend, that's much more of a blended opportunity, which I think would be of great benefit in Bangladesh, that you're not online 100% of the time, but you're not in person 100% of the time as well, especially in rural areas and areas with low bandwidth. There would be opportunities to have some of the learning that takes place online, and then some that takes in person. And as well, and this is why I think local solutions are so important. When the learning is taking place online, you want to make sure that you have tools and resources that are made for low bandwidth environments so that students do not have to be online the entire time. So in remote learning, when people especially have gone to Zoom, it requires those students to be online synchronously, just as we are doing today, which eats up significant amounts of their bandwidth and their data, which can be very expensive in rural areas. Creating solutions where students can go to a platform like an LMS, download what is that they need, and then watch that later on. Ideally, if you have environments where your school has Wi-Fi, even when school is not in session, but people can go to the school grounds, get to the school grounds, download their assignments, review those offline, which is less costly, and then go back to the school, even outside, and then reload their information to go back. And then when they're in the classroom session, they have an opportunity to interact with those teachers. So I think it's really important to start looking at that full continuum of e-learning, which includes synchronous and asynchronous opportunities. Also can include opportunities for students to complete their assignments offline and then upload those, but also then include really innovative assessment strategies, looking more at formative assessment I think the example, if you're worried about cheating and having students do oral presentations is great, but we don't all need to do our oral presentation at the same time. Ask students to upload their oral presentation, and then the instructor can go and review those at their own time. So that's how to sort of segment those asynchronous and synchronous opportunities. But I think the most important thing, and I think hopefully we'll talk more about that, is teacher training. So whether that's the primary, secondary, or tertiary level, we need to advance teacher training. Teachers are now being asked to teach in ways that are no way aligned to the way that they learn from themselves. That's the greatest challenge that teachers are being presented with now. And so if we really want teachers to embrace these innovative opportunities, we have to support them in that training. Or what they'll do is just go back and try to replicate what they were doing in person and do that online. And that's what we see when people say, oh, I'm going to turn on my Zoom and I'm going to lecture the same way that I lectured to students before. And that's why they're not turning on their cameras. You're not asking them anything. There's no reason for them to turn on their cameras because we're not asking them to engage. But having opportunities where students can come in, watch the video of the instructor, and then interact with their peers, and then respond to that. So it's really important for us to start building up our knowledge and understanding of these innovative and highly engaging and effective e-learning instructional approaches. And that's going to be needed need to come from training, which again is going to need help from the ministry bodies to help the funding of the retraining for teachers, redevelopment of teacher training programs as they come into the system, and as well supporting post-secondary educators so they can really capitalize on the true affordances of all the technology and resources that they have available.
Great, thank you, Camille. Thank you for emphasizing on the training aspects. I know from my university that we kind of put a lot of emphasis on the training, and you rightly said that teaching online is a completely different proposition. It's a completely new genre, and you just can't transport your physical, curriculum or the way lesson plans just transport it to online, because it's a different engagement. But thank you for raising these things. I also like to mention that that I agree that we need to look for homegrown solutions, and I believe our government is doing that. I know that there's a lot of research going on centrally. Bangladesh is kind of on this digital Bangladesh pathway where the government is investing a lot to make the country digital, and that includes the education sector. Because most colleges and schools and universities will not be able to afford the kind of established global LMSs. So, but we have creative and very smart developers here. So hopefully that will come through. The other thing the government did, at least for universities, is that they gave us free access to Zoom. Almost all teachers at university level were able to sign up with a government agency and get a free Zoom platform. So thank you all for your contributions on this aspect. I'd like to now slightly move away from this because, in Bangladesh, although we have, recently Bangladesh celebrated the 50th year of its independence. And, one of the amazing stories of the last 50 years was how much we advanced in the social indicators, including education, girls' education, etc. But behind these numbers of very high student enrollment rates, the high levels of student enrollment in universities, behind these statistics and numbers, there is disquiet about the quality of the education. So that is something I think that's acknowledged by everybody, including the government, that is probably the next step. Not only the numbers of young people engaged in learning and education, but also how to improve the quality of education. So they get a global quality education, or at the same time they get through particularly the tertiary level, but which builds up from the previous primary school and middle school and senior school level. the kind of skill set that is required by the employers, by the graduates themselves, should they wish to start their own ventures. So that is the challenge before us. And this is something that is particularly the case with Bangladesh. So I would really like to bring in, maybe I can start with Professor Momen this time. So what do you think about what challenges we face in order to raise the quality of education? Because it's all been identified that in terms of quality indicators, we still have a way to go. So if I can ask you about what do you think are the most important bits that needs to be implemented in order to reach our goal of having graduates with comparable international quality skills, and also skills that will be of need within the country. Thank you, Momen.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Imran. I'd like to bring in an analogy with an industry that I work for also, which is a textile and garment industry. If you look at that industry where there were standards, the international standards that we have to meet, or we had to meet, to be able to continue as their vendor. So there were various parameters in terms of the quality aspect of what we're doing, in terms of the safety, security of the workplace that we have to ensure. And so those, as far as the industry is concerned, we are competing neck and neck with all the competing countries that are supplying these merchandise to the world market. So there is no Bangladeshi standard. That's an international standard that we have to meet, and we have to continuously try to beat and keep us afloat. So whoever is working there, the challenges are in terms of quantity, in terms of quality, in terms of timeliness, all of those things we have to meet. So likewise, in our education system, we have to adopt to an international standard. So each of our organization should be able to go and meet those standards. That we call them accreditation. So that is something probably will bring us few notch upward towards that level. That's having said, if you're referring to quality, that is something I think we should try and establish in each of our educational institutions, which is not, I think, a commonplace, or which is not a widespread practice in the country yet. IBA, at IBA, our students are very highly sought after. So we see that our students, once they come out, they are internationally comparable. They are employed locally in multinational, and they're also employed elsewhere in the country. In a few years' time, they're elsewhere in the country, and there is no such thing as there's a Bangladeshi quality there. But I think in other in education institutions, that what we see is that the graduates that we're having, I'm not referring to all, but some of them, not that employers are happily employing them. They have to also seek overseas, nationals in the middle management, in some cases in top management as well, to run the show. So there I see that there is something lacking there. There's something, there's a big, I would say, disconnect with what is needed in the industry and what is being produced from the educational system. So their disconnect is primarily due with, I think, I don't know, probably we are producing something and there is not being demanded there. So there has to be a continuous dialogue and upgradation of our curriculum to kind of meet the requirements that are there. And it is all the more important these days because of the disruptions and all those technological advances that are taking places, and all the potential job losses that are expected to happen because of all of these technological advents. So I think it will be all the more important for us to overall our entire learning curriculum, both in all the levels, so that we address those 21st century requirements that are coming. So in our country, we have our overseas employment. They are bringing in around $1 billion a year, a month or so. But we are also spending on $7-8 billion for people who are employed here, mostly in the middle management. So there is something that is missing that our education system could not provide. That's why we have to employ those things. Or there's a cultural element there. The work culture that we have and the work culture that they bring in are different. So those things to be looked at, and there has to be some sort of a dialogue, continuous dialogue between the industry and the education institution to upgrade these things, so that we do have that level. I mean, what you just said, it is not that our boys and girls cannot compete internationally. Continuously, they're competing internationally. They're getting themselves enrolled in top-notch universities in the world. They're doing excellent. They're doing brilliant results. But we have to make it a more commonplace than not a few, not a selected few. That is what we need to see happening in this country, so that overall our quality of education comes up to an internationally compatible level, so that our citizens become at par with any other graduate from any other university, top-notch universities in the region or in the world. So I think those are the things that we have to do. There has to be a standard that we must try and focus on, and we have to meet that standard, and if not beat it. Over to you, Imran.
Thank you, Momen. I was a teacher in IBA for 22 years before moving to a private university, and so I'm kind of seeing the both sides. IBA is a very special place, as you might have realized, because the quality of its graduates are really the cream, but the majority of our universities are facing far more challenges. You see, if I think back historically about Dhaka University and other public universities, there were so few places available in these universities. There was like a quality filter system. Whoever was able to competitively get in was smart to start with. So smart in, smart out. So they ended up being smart anyway. And but now the situation is very different. There's a democratization in the there's a lot of spaces available, places available in universities, and even at the village level, there are aspirations of a young village girl or village boys that they will go to university. This is something which was not there at all, let's say even 30, 40 years ago. So this has produced a huge demand for university places. But at the same time, now the ball is in the court of the universities in order to how do we impart an education that will actually give them value for their investment, not just in terms of money, but in terms of the time. And one of the things I find at my university, and most universities will probably share that, is that when students come to us at the age of 18, 19, in Bangladesh, they start a bit late. I would say the median age is around 19 when they start university. Some of them seem unprepared. So the kind of the quality issue actually starts way back, probably starts from the primary school level. And also, I'm sure parents have something to do about how they bring up their kids, in a sense that are they being brought up with a curiosity, with the fact that they will not always be spoon-fed, that they will be encouraged to be creative and learn by doing things. So can I bring in Sabrina, and if you could speak, I know John Wilson is such a good school that you get, but John Wilson is just one of the very few privileged schools, but in terms of the whole country, and talking about this quality imperative, what are your thoughts? How can we, or at what stage should we be, or what should we be doing differently so that the students who come through the schooling system and going into universities have the right kind of mindset to make the most of the university education, and they end up with the right kind of quality or skill set, including soft skill set. What is your take on the role of schools and colleges? Thank you.
Question, because actually it all starts from the school. When they're already in the university, you can't change much. The system that they have adopted already for learning, it is embedded already. So it has to start from the school. The problem in the schools, in most of the schools, I would say that it's overcrowded classrooms. If you have a classroom of 40 students, a teacher cannot, it is quite impossible to connect with the students. And the main way of teaching students is connecting with them, right? So that's very important. So I would say the problem lies firstly in overcrowded classrooms, teachers training. There's a lack of teachers training, I would say. Yes, we have, especially in Bangla medium school, for Bangla medium schools, we have B.Ed degrees and M.Ed degrees, but a lot of the time what we have seen that these are all degrees and papers, certificates only, but is it being implemented? Whatever they have learned, the technology, the teaching methodology, everything that they have learned in these courses, are they actually applying it in the classroom or not? So that's important. And how are they applying? Because when they're taught to be in a classroom where there is going to be hardly 30 students. But when they're going back to the real life classrooms, maybe there are 80 students. I have met many teachers who have come for trainings, to participate in training with us in Dhaka, and they have come from outside of Dhaka, and we have seen that they have 80 to 70 students in a classroom. So how is it possible for the teachers to connect with these students? So that's one thing that needs to be changed, I think. And obviously, one size fits all technique of teaching is never going to be helpful, because when you have 25 students to 30 students in a classroom, they all learn in different ways. So are the teacher experimenting with that? Are the teacher aware of it? The learning, how the students are learning, how their students are learning. So that's, I think that is a missing point over here. And also, there's especially in Bangladesh, the salary of the teachers are extremely low. So, to compensate that, a teacher has to work in different, field maybe after they teach in a school or college, or they are engaged in coaching, which totally defies the quality of education in the institution. So I think these are real problems, and these are real life problems that teachers are facing, and it has a great effect on the students, of course. And the content that we have, it is mainly theory basis. But if we move towards a more hands-on, teaching style, I think that's going to be very helpful. Especially when the children, have this spirit. When they're in school, they have a lot of spirit of learning new things. So when it's not done in the school level, when they are taught in rote learning system, obviously, they just learn for the sake of getting grades, the sake of go through the assessment system that we have. And that's not real learning. But if we can change that, if we can change the pattern of teaching, I think that's the key of the development of education.
Thank you, Sabrina. And again, I mean, as you highlighted the importance of training, not
Yes.
only for training in the e-learning, but just training in teaching per se. So important. Omar, you and I have talked so many times about the challenges about, that we face at the university level and how we have not done a great job. I mean, we are still teaching the same way that we've been teaching, let's say 30, 40 years ago. We haven't done a great job of trying to build in, an opportunity for students to pick up skills at the same time as the academic curriculum. And we are only thinking about it now because our employers are continuously telling us that they're not finding the right candidate for the various job openings. So, given your long experience at at the university at the top level as the vice chancellor, tell us about some of these challenges. How do we actually impart skills through the taught, that's a 4-year undergrad degree program, or even beyond skills? And I'm not talking to hard skills. I'm bringing in soft skills. I'm bringing in things like attitude, professionalism, and other things. Can you share your thoughts about from your learning? Thank you.
Thank you, Imran. As you well know, I'm a bit of a heretic in terms of education. Having spent most of my life abroad in terms of education, other than graduating from high school, I did my undergraduate at Harvard University. I did my PhD at Harvard University. I did an MD at Northwestern. I've taught at Harvard, and then I came back 18 years ago, taught at IUB, and then now I'm at ULAB. And I'm going to say a couple of sort of very radical things, which I think need to be said. One is that easily over 90% of whatever people learn is basically useless in terms of what they do professionally. That's the reality of it. And I'm talking about even in terms of medical education, which is supposed to be, more professionally oriented. My daughter asked me that, okay, you must have learned a lot of useful stuff in medical school. And I said, well, only about 10%, because she asked me stuff about chemistry that she's doing. She's an undergraduate now, and I have no idea what she's talking about. And she says, how are you, how come you're a doctor and all of that? And I said, look, you don't need not even 5% of all this stupid organic chemistry and all of this. I have these nightmares and, PTSD thinking back 45 years ago about my organic chemistry exam, none of which I remember. And fortunately, none of which I needed. So that's the first thing. I think there is a huge mismatch all over the world, even in terms of elite educational curricula and what actually people do, even in very, very defined professional areas like medicine and engineering. Now, if you go to a much broader area like business, I think that the mismatch is even greater. So the first question I have, and this is to my good friend, Professor Momen, is, for the life of me, I have no idea what industry needs, because I don't think industry knows what it needs. Whenever we talk to industry, and this, by the way, I mean, there's some evidence of that even in all these various consulting. McKinsey does various reports every year and all of that. No industry person has ever been able to come up with a catalog of skill sets that they think are needed for their particular sector. It always comes down to, we need someone who's analytic, we need someone with good communication skills and good people skills. Big deal. I mean, none of that is going to help me as an educator, all right? So the first thing, I want to go back to something that Sabrina said, and very rightfully so. There's that old sort of weird saying that you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, but basically means that, at the point that we're getting in students at university, they are already basically 90% formed. So you can't transform someone who has very poor skills at the university level and suddenly expect in 3 to 4 years to make them into somebody who's super skilled. They've come in with very, very, it's a heterogeneous group. And let me point out again that all that elite institutions all over the world do, whether it's the Harvards, or the Oxfords, or the IBAs in Bangladesh, they basically take in elite students who are already super smart. They do absolutely no value addition whatsoever. I can tell you this because of my own experience. And not surprisingly, these elite students end up doing very well. And the institution gets all this credit for saying, like you go to institution X and you're going to get a great career, because as if, the assumption is that by going to IBA, you're going to be great. or by going to Harvard, you're going to be great, or going to Oxford or Manchester Business, whatever it is, you pick your, whatever school that you like. The reality is these schools do absolutely nothing. They basically sort things out. And by the way, Dhaka University is one of the most competitive institutions to get into worldwide. I mean, it takes in not even 1% of the people who apply. Not surprisingly, Dhaka University students dominate industry, dominate policy. Come on, you're taking your scheme, cream skimming. So I don't look at elite institutions to give us any ideas about what to do, because I don't think they're doing a very good job. The value addition all over the world is very little. And as I think the real issue, that the conversation that I think universities need to have with industry is, okay, come on, tell us what you need, but be specific about it. Why is it that you're importing, $7 billion a year, and I'm shocked at this figure, is spent in middle management and upper management by bringing in people from Sri Lanka or from India or from Pakistan. And by the way, these are not people coming from the top universities in those countries either. I mean, what I'm told is these are people coming from second and third tier universities, who even those universities are doing a much better job producing skilled graduates than our top university. So there is a huge mismatch, and we have to learn a little bit from what is it that the Sri Lankan, Pakistani, and Indian institutions, I'm not even going further afield like Canada and Australia and the US and the UK, what are our regional institutions? And remember, these are not the top tier institutions. What are they doing? How are they being able to produce graduates who have skills that our industry seems to benefit from? So I think first we need to have a more honest conversation from the employers. Okay, what do you need? Now, from the point of view of an educator, I'm not sure how much of it is possible, because we are sort of wedded to these curricula. You need to take X credits of finance and X credits of marketing or X credits of math. 99% of all the math I've ever learned, and I'm a statistician, it's been totally useless. I've never used any calculus or anything. I mean, for the life of me, I couldn't do anything. Why are we forcing students to do these very, very arcane exercises, which they're never going to use ever in their life, even if they go on, unless they're going to be a professor. See, the part of the problem is the curriculum is designed to produce people like the teachers who are teaching it. Yes, if you want to be a professor of mathematics or a professor of finance, the curriculum is great because it teaches you how to, the skill set. But if you're going to go out and work in industry, or even if you're going to be a professional, it's not clear to me that you need to do that. But in a generic sense, I'm actually quite optimistic. When I look at my students at ULAB, and ULAB definitely gets very good students in the Bangladeshi context, I don't think these students are that much different than my students at Harvard. I'll be honest with you. The ones at Harvard, they're just, they're more savvy, they speak better, they have, they're more, and as I jokingly say, at Harvard, the problem is everybody raises their hand and asks a question, even if they have no idea what they're talking about. At ULAB, even if they know exactly what they're talking about, they'll never raise their hand, because it's the culture that I don't know enough, and maybe I'm going to look stupid if I ask a question, and, the teacher always knows best, I think the difference is that we need to inculcate a culture of inquiry, of questioning, and we need to teach them skills which are not based on these narrow sort of curriculum-based things. Like I usually give them, I'm struck, I teach an undergraduate course after many, many decades on health and society. And I'll give them a question. I asked them, do you think the poor are worse off than the rich? It sounds like an obvious question. And I said, why? Why are the poor worse off than the rich? And how do we know that? Or, what is the evidence that you have to support it? And what I'm suggesting is that we need a curriculum that essentially uses unstructured kinds of problems and gets them to think about it, rather than spoon feeding them these very structured things. Even in terms of STEM, I think part of the problem with the STEM curricula everywhere in the world is that it's overly structured. Teach them all these arcane math and all these arcane programming things, and most of these people are never going to do that. So to summarize, I think we need to step back from our current curricula, have a more honest conversation with industry and say, okay, give us a much more specific set of guidelines as to what your industry needs are. And I think that would actually help industry as well. I mean, instead of bemoaning the fact that we don't hire Bangladeshi graduates because we can't find good ones, and we have to take these second or third tier Sri Lankan, Indian, and Pakistani graduates who do the job better. Let's find out what is it that they need. And then I think universities need to think a little bit about, okay, how do we teach them these skill sets? So I think the problem is not with the students. Part of the problem is that the secondary school system sucks. I mean, I think it's really, I think, a waste of 12 years. They're spoon-fed stuff. They're forced to memorize. The most scary question for a Bangladeshi university student is, what do you think? Because he or she has never thought. They'll also, which chapter is it in and which expert can I cite? And you can't blame them. I mean, this is a country where people memorize essays. I mean, that just tells you that how little we value creativity and individual contribution. So I'm going to go off my polemic here. I think we all know this stuff, but I think there is a real opportunity here, post-COVID, for us to have a more honest conversation with potential employers, and to ask them that, look, do a proper audit of what your needs are. Come tell us, and maybe the more, I think, innovative universities, and hopefully ULAB will be among them and others as well, will do a better job of saying we don't need to teach Finance 101 the way it's taught in every single other business school. Maybe we need to teach some other ways of thinking about integrating the curriculum. So that's what I think. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think there's a lot of inertia and a lot of vested interest in keeping the system in the form it is. But if we don't break out of it, I don't think we're going to move forward. Sorry
Thanks,
about
Omar.
This
Thanks, Omar.
stream
Spoke
of consciousness.
from the heart there. Thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. So before I come to you, Camille, can I get a quick response from Momen, because you represent amongst the five of us industry as well. So quick response from you.
Okay. Actually, I'm kind of in agreement with Professor Omar Rahman that the industry itself doesn't know what they need. But if you want to look at what they employ, for example, here we have got only a handful of industries. We have got textile and garment industry, we've got pharmaceutical industry, we have got plastics, and some of them could steel, cement. You can have at best 10, 12 industries that we're having. And if you look at the people that we have employed, they are technical people that we have employed. Not even, I don't know about Pakistan, there are Sri Lankans, a lot of Sri Lankans working here, a lot of Indians working here. The Sri Lankans are not even university graduates. So they have got some sort of a skill, but what they bring with them is a work culture. That is something is totally absent, So I was once a party partner or rather I was, I'm also in training our local team with this government-sponsored project. So when I was interviewed by the team, where there was, since it's an ADB financed one, there was ADB professionals there, and they were from the government. And one of the things they were trying to say is that these education institutions to train them. I said, okay, fine, that is fine, but you have to also bring these trainees to those environments, like, for example, a competing factory in Sri Lanka, a competing factory in China, in Turkey, to know how things are done there. There is a work culture that we need to somehow digest in and bring it with us to sort of replicate here, because that's something where we are overemploying. Everybody's underworked, underemployed. So we are number of people that we're employing are more. So there are wastage, there are time, equipment, material wastage. The costs are going high. So there are problems with systems. They don't adhere to the system. They don't adhere to the standard operating procedures. They know better. These are the things that are there, sort of inherent embedded in the work culture, which those technicians from overseas or those middle managers from overseas, they come in and they try and break. So there is something that the employers, they don't dig much into the problem. They bring in a solution which is a temporary thing. They are not changing the culture of the organization, rather having somebody to do some I would say tidbit improvements to show the results. So they are not going deep into the problem. The problem is they don't also know what is the problem. So to solve that, again, the academician has to go in there and they have to find out the real reasons where they can bring about some changes and improvement. So that's why there cannot be a disconnect. There cannot be that, they will have to tell us, but we got to also find out what is there, what is the need there. Look at the people that they have, employed. What are these people bringing in that we cannot provide? So those are the things that we need to improve upon. I think it has got more to do with the work culture, which is, as Professor Omar has rightly mentioned, we are 90% of the thing that we are teaching is not required. So these are the things that are absolutely absent. We don't teach all of those things that are very important in our industry. So what I think, wrap up, what I think we can, since there are only a handful of industries that has developed over the last 50 years in this country, what we can do is we can focus ourselves in these industries who are being employed, what are the disconnect between those people and us that we are providing. So when we see that this is the difference, we just improve upon that. I think that will probably help solve the problem a bit. Thank you. Over to you, Imran.
Thank you. Thank you, Camille. So you got a kind of glimpse of the big problem you're all facing. So please come in with your take on some of the dilemmas, some of the challenges that a country like Bangladesh is facing.
I first of all want to begin by saying then some of the challenges that you're having that just been spoken about industry saying that we're not training our students well enough and they're not fully prepared. It's the same thing that we have here. And one of the key things is this missing role, and I think it's a missing role for us in North America, but definitely in the developing world. And that is that of curriculum designers or instructional designers. Because even as a faculty member, and you could be a faculty member in finance, and industry tells you, here's exactly what we need. As a subject matter expert in finance, do they really know how to create the most effective learning experience? No, they don't. And that's why they need to work with a curriculum designer or an instructional designer that can get that input from industry, that can work closely with the esteemed faculty members that are the subject matter experts. But these curriculum developers have that understanding of learning science, that they can connect that to make sure they're creating a very effective and engaging learning experience so that they are learning something that is important and relevant and that they're not going to, as Omar has said, forget 90% of what it is that they've learned. And I think that those curriculum developers can be useful at the primary and secondary level as well to create this overlying structure of highly effective learning experiences and curriculum continuum, and then share that with educators to be able to then facilitate that within the classroom. I think the other thing that is an ongoing commonality across the globe, anywhere that has a highly advanced educational system has educators that are well paid and well trained. When educators are well paid, it makes it very competitive. And then you can take the cream of the crop who wants to be an educator. But it's very difficult to advance your educational system if educators are not being paid in a way that draws the best of your graduates into that system. And as was also said then, you can't wait till they're in university. You have to start much earlier. You have to start, I would say, towards the end of primary, even before they get into secondary. Make sure that there is where they have a solid foundation of 21st century skills, the critical thinking, the collaboration, that they're problem solvers, that they know how to use technology to solve problems and have those connections to how they use their learning to advance them in the real world. That has to happen then. And if you don't have those curriculum designers, or you don't have those coaches, again, you're not going to get a top-notch cricketer or footballer without a coach. And to think back, within our education system, where are the coaches? Who are the people that come to, whether they're a professor, whether they're a secondary teacher or primary teacher, who are the people that they can go to say, I don't think that I'm teaching as effectively as I can. Can you help me to get better, to learn to teach better with my students? There's tutors and coaches for students for their standardized tests. There's tons of coaches in athletics. Where are the academic coaches that can help any classroom teacher or any university professor to get better in their practice? That is a key role that is needed to be able to advance an educational system so they can take advantage of the affordances of the technologies that we've talked about as well, and really help to advance in an educational system. That those roles need to be there to help as they're going along and to make sure that we're constantly pushing and advancing and innovative. That would be my final recommendation to support the advancement of education in Bangladesh.
Thank you, Camille. You raised such a important point. Where are the coaches for the teachers? Absolutely. I'm afraid we're going to run out of time. It's already about way past 1.5 hours since we started. So I think I'm going to bring it to a close. Although I wanted to talk about another topic, I think what we've covered here has been very rich, and I think it's sufficient material that will be valuable for the summit. So let me just summarize and end that we've discussed the issue about e-learning and the importance of bringing in learning management systems, either the real deal or even ad hoc country-specific solutions that work. And it's, I think all of us feel that it's here to stay. Post-pandemic, there will be blended learning because what it has shown us is that it is all these people, all these young people who are left out from the formal education system can be reached through e-learning. And that's going to be a huge game changer in a country like Bangladesh. And thank you for all your passionate feedback, talking about the quality of education at the primary, secondary level, at the tertiary level, etc. This has been a fascinating session. I want to thank each and every one of you for your valuable time and contributions. So Camille, Momen, Sabrina, and Omar, thank you so much for appearing here, and I wish everybody a very good evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Imran Rahman, to moderate this very, very crucial topic of today's, which is education. Thank you, our panel sponsor, My Classroom Online, once again, to sponsor this session.